So you have to get into the mind of the architect, and you really, if you have the luxury of a living architect that you can talk to, that's great. If you don't, then get all the coffee table books, get all the books, do all the research, go online, find out everything about that architect, what makes them tick, where they grew up, where they learned, where they studied, and then what other homes they've done. So that's what we did here with Tom Kundig. Olson Kundig is the firm, and Tom himself did this home, and he worked directly with the owner. So we also really asked the hard questions to the owner, like why this the bifold system that you put on the outside of your house, and it has many reasons as to why they did it, not just because of the aesthetic. So it also can be closed down and becomes a completely locked down home, and this particular owner likes to travel and likes his safety and security. So I think that's it. Learn the architect. What do you say, Branden?
I think Rayni's pretty much said it. It's like try to figure out and understand what the architect was thinking, what story they're trying to tell. I mean, when I first got into architecture, Lautner really inspired me, and I kind of wanted to know everything about Lautner. And obviously, you can't learn everything overnight or in a year. It's a constant exploration. But I mean, Tom Kundig did such an incredible job, and Rayni was talking about the bifolds. And really, see those bifolding windows? They're actually used as architectural elements that come down and create this really cool lighting through the house and security, and then it also works as overhangs for the sun. And the reason they did that is because if you did it that way, you could set the house closer to the edge of the cliff. So there's all sorts of really cool elements they use that for plans and permitting, and also architecture features.
And then from a tech, from a tech perspective, this guy's really dialed in with the technology. You can set the shades the way you sleep. So in your primary bedroom, if you want them to open right at 5:30 a.m. or 6:30 a.m., whatever it is, you can set them, and it's amazing.
People love stories, and stories pepper the journey. And I think the bigger the story, the better the story. The buyer or the people that are really interested in it, it really helps with intrinsic value and setting value.
It's like selling art. The Provence of art, the reason that you want to know who owned it before you and before them, and that's what creates the story that allows you to sell and not feel like you're selling. And that's what we've learned along the way, is like you can try to push this down someone's throat and be like, and this is a Promontory, and this is the bird streets and the price per square foot. Like, nobody really responds to that. They respond to a subtler way of, and Tom Kundig himself has his name on the nameplate in the guest room around this corner. Come take a look at this. Tom himself stays in this guest room. Like, that's so cute.
Is that true?
Yeah. His
That's
name
incredible.
is on, and the light and the toggles on the light story, they come from France, and it's instead of having just, because everything's tricked out with the technology, but it kind of gives it an older European feel, and the warmth of the bronze toggles. So the lights go like this, which feels sort of old school and
which
European.
were made in France, which also have so many different features. They actually dim, so you hold them down, the shades come down, but you could stop them at certain points. You could dim. You could turn this into a very warm lighting or a white lighting with all of these toggles.
Yeah.
So a lot of
tell the story about a simple toggle, which is it's a light switch. To tell that story, it takes it away from, I'm selling you to buy this house, I'm pushing you, and instead I'm educating you, or I'm enlightening you on something culturally different than what we always see.
Okay, last question from my end, and then we'll open it up to your questions. You guys have sold the Ennis house, which was
My favorite house ever.
Our favorite house. That was
Yeah.
so fun. But that was an older home.
Mm-hmm.
This is a new build with an architect attached. Is there any difference when you're selling a home that is new versus one that's old with an architect attached to it? Like a Paul R. Williams versus...
Well, was the biggest obstacle in selling the Ennis house. It's concrete blocks. Concrete
Tell them what
blocks.
it is. Do you guys know what the Ennis house is? It's the famous, you know what it is, True? It's the famous Frank Lloyd Wright in Los Feliz. And tell them exactly
And it
set
was
up.
in Blade Runner and so many cool movies, and it's such a futuristic house. I think it was built in either 1918 or 1926. I believe it was 26. And it's a concrete block house. Now, if people know about Frank Lloyd Wright houses, over the years, the blocks are like sponges, so they start leaking. So any historian and anybody that wants to buy one of these houses finds out that these houses are very difficult to upkeep. So our client figured out how to do basically some kind of polymer resin to basically seal this house off and basically bring it back to life so it doesn't become a sponge, and on a beautiful winter day when it's raining, all of a sudden there's leaks coming through the house.
Wow.
So there's so many obstacles in selling a house that's 100 years old and it's an architectural home. New is much easier because now you're dealing with all the best windows, the best waterproofing, you're dealing with all the best, this is all a pedestal system out there, you will see no drains, all the water goes through those cracks and it drains out with the best drainage systems, and it's just, I think it's
So much easier to sell a new home.
in terms of inspection, it's much easier.
But you guys didn't title this house. You just kept it Collingwood. If you were going to relaunch it, what would you title this home?
Well, I actually love Collingwood because people don't know this, but Collingwood's a bird. This is actually a bird street. There's only 5 homes on the street. So it's a very wide street. There's no homes on the other side. So if you have a 200 or 300 person party here, you can easily, with some of the bird streets like Oriole and like Blue Jay, it's much tighter streets with the parking
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a party here. We got a lot of people who showed up. So thank you guys for showing up.
And no valet.
And no valet. That's incredible. We're going to open it up to 2 questions.
No, you could ask more. We have.
We can?
Yeah, we have a little.
Randy's got a really tight schedule.
That's okay. We're good.
We're good. We're good. Questions from the audience for Branden and Rayni Williams. Any questions you guys have for them? Oh, we got one in the back. Yes, say your name.
My name is Brock Harris. Nice to meet you. We live near the Ennis house. I didn't know you guys sold that. Love that house. We just love it. What kind of things do you do to market a home like this besides what we all do? The pictures, the video tours, the showings. What other things at sort of this level of house do you like to do or that work to find buyers?
That's a really good question. I would say try to target the architect and the buyers and the historians that have previously purchased their homes, or kind of geo-fence in a way that architect. So one thing that we did with the Ennis property was we found collectors. And the one way that we did it was by going through the dossier that does the tours, because that home is deemed historic and there has to be 12 tours per year or something like that. I could be off by
No, you're right.
No, you're
12
right.
tours with the property.
it comes with it. So we spoke to the dossier. We really dug in and leaned into who would be buying this home. And then if you're lucky enough to get Architectural Digest or something like that that can give you some more tentacles, we did a video on it that it made me look like a historian. I basically wrote my lines, and even my mom was like, how do you know all these facts? I was like, I just know. And then all these historians started coming out to us, and buyer and collectors and people that were going to buy these homes, like Mr. Burkle that owned it. He never lived in it, but he just wanted to own it. He had a fun story, actually. As a teenager or a young boy, he knocked on the door and said, he wrote a note, I'd love to take a tour.
At 12 years old.
12 years old.
True story.
And said, please call me, or call my parents or whatever. He didn't have a cell phone. So they called him and they let him take a tour. And he said to them, thank you, I'm going to own this one day. And then he bought it in his early 50s or late 40s. He did a $15 million restoration on it. Wow.
He bought it because he saw it deteriorating, and he knew that it was almost an obligation because financially he could do this. And he bought it to basically restore and reconstruct this house that was basically dwindling away on this hill.
So the idea is, when you're selling these architecturals, target the past people that are interested in the architect.
I want to say one more thing though, what's funny about it, because everybody was saying, a family's not going to buy this house. A guy like Ron Burkle who just wants to use it to entertain, or a single guy, or a divorcee, a writer, or whatever, is going to buy this house. Well, I never believed that, because I never believe anything. And my favorite saying is, while you're busy making plans is when God's laughing. And guess what? A family with 3 kids bought the house.
To live in it.
And is living in the house. So, and I kind of knew that. And everyone's like, no, a family called to see it. They're not buying it. And I was,
Well, I think that's a good point, because you want to target the specific people for these architecturals, but you also want to target the masses. Because what most people, when you guys are going to go on the tour, you're going to look at the primary bedroom, and you're all going to probably say the same thing. This is the ultimate bachelor pad. However, we've learned over the years that the ultimate bachelor pads so often sell to families. So when you're marketing these, hit the architectural spots that you can, and do your research on the collectors, and then, but also open it up to the masses.
Great. I think that's very true. Yes.
To piggyback on his question.
Wait, what's your name?
True Cross from Normand and Associates.
Nice, that's where we started.
Same you.
Both of us started at Normand.
Oh, I know.
Normand's what brought us together.
My question kind of piggybacks on what you said. Where, only so many people can buy a house like this. So where is your favorite place to advertise? I know for a long time, it was the LA Business Journal. That was kind of the darling for a while. What's next level? Where would you go to advertise that's going to capture a buyer?
Good question. He looks at me because that's hard. I love the LA Business Journal. You just have to go
You have to go everywhere.
You have to go everywhere.
Now, we had Ennis do the property. He gave an amazing property tour. We also made our own video. We've LA Times, Wall Street Journal. You never know. YouTube. But really now, where do you market a house? Right to here.
Yeah.
This is where people are buying houses really today.
Right.
And people are always like, why don't you make a 1,000-page book of the house? It's like, I give it to a lot of people that from up north now, they're in Texas, like, you think I want this paper? Like,
we made books that were several pounds, and you send them to someone, they're like, we can't believe.
No, they're like, that's
like such a waste.
No, they're like, that's like,
Everyone's reading.
yeah, that's
And how much are those books typically
Right,
cost?
exactly.
thousands of dollars.
Tens of thousands of dollars.
Ask Rebecca.
No one uses it. Rebecca.
Your firewood.
Head of marketing doesn't.
I was like, are we going to keep this, or?
So I think that's a good advice. Like, market to their phone.
Everywhere, and people have asked, why hasn't this house sold yet? It's been on the market now with COVID a little over a year, and we've gotten really close. And, these homes, it's a connection. What brings the seller and the buyer together, and I think what's being an amazing agent is being a conduit and staying away, and not bringing your ego in the middle of these deals and trying to, it's like, let it come together, and it will come together. This place will sell to the right buyer that goes, oh my God, to the seller, thank you so much for doing this for me, so I didn't have to deal with the brain damage.
And also true, look at the publications and when they come out and their shelf life. So if you have a listing like this, you have to allot yourself a certain amount of money to spend on the properties. That's why listing these properties is very expensive and it's hard to do, but it will pay off if you get it sold. So if you're coming out in the summertime, sort of target where the publications are that are going to have the longest shelf life. And then hit all the social stuff, because that's easy and that's free. Do as much video content as you can. Protect certain rooms if you want, because there are some people that don't want their stuff blasted out. So you just kind of have to take a lot of, ask questions, take temperature reads on everything, and then diversify. It's like a financial portfolio.
And I would also
print ads and digital ads.
I just want to add to that, and Branden and Rayni have had this listing. They don't think about phase 1, they think about phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. How are we going to continue to keep this property top of mind and reach new people every quarter if it gets to that? And I think that's the big mistake.
And one last thing, we want to leave no stone uncovered. So we also work with Alexander and his publicity firm to make sure that we're hitting everywhere and we're really getting it out there. And a lot of this stuff, these big listings, cost a lot of money. And you, as an agent, you slowly work yourself up to these listings, and when you get them, you put everything in it, because you don't want the next guy to be able to sell it.
And that's why if you're a buyer's agent now, you should always take a portion of your income and put it aside for when you go transition from being a buyer's agent to a listing agent. Because there is so much money that goes into being a listing agent, and if you don't sell it, you won't get it back. Of course, you can write it off, but it's not going to financially.
And it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt.
And then my first listing, I remember, I was brand new in the business. I had not a lot of deals, and I actually had to get a credit card just to market a property in Truesdale. I was 25 years old, and I had, and then I thought, I'm never going to do this again. I'm always going to put a chunk away for listings. Of course, now then once you start to get the listings, you flow. But before you're flowing, save some of your commission for if you want to become a listing agent. It's really important.
I love that, Rainey. That's such great advice.
Oh, well, there you go.
Worked with her for 3 years, never heard that one. That's a great piece of advice. More questions. We have time for one more question, and then we're going to
Jesse, anything?
take.
Oh, come on, Jesse. Oh, yeah, right.
Jesse
Come on,
knows
Jesse.
everything in
Listen,
the
I've
back.
been hearing it for 10 years.
Jesse, come on.
Anybody else? Just ask a question. Who cares for fun?
Doesn't
Throw
have
one
to be
out
about
there.
There we go.
Right here.
Hi, my name is Max. Do you think the LA mega mansion market is oversaturated? With so many listings like that, the one hasn't sold, and like so many mansions over $50, $100 million struggling to sell.
Actually, I think it was oversaturated. And I think in the last year, you've seen so many of these. I mean, we just had the San Onofre sale of 83 million, the Bungie sale of 44 million, the highest sale in Calabasas of 30 million.
Alwood at the beginning of the
Alwood.
year.
Alwood, Eli Broads at 52 million. I think you're going to be surprised. 2021 was an amazing year for real estate. And this is a very special house. And
But Max, that's a good question, because was it oversaturated and is it oversaturated? So what happened was 5 years ago, because these take 4 or 5 years to build, people were getting money fast. It was coming, there were banks lending construction loans, and every developer, or people were becoming developers. So we got a big influx of the luxury property. A lot of it has sold. And now what's left is pretty soon going to be gone. And what you're going to see in 5 years, there's not a lot more of these, because if you drive around the construction sites and the appetite of the builders has really decreased, and the banks aren't really lending money anymore
And
like that.
this did, sorry to interrupt.
I feel like the crypto industry.
But this took 7 years to build. He bought the lot for 12 million. There was 7 offers, and you could never build this big again. They keep shrinking what you can build on these lots.
What's the limit right now? Is it 45%?
I think right now, if you were to be able to build on this lot, it would be like total 8,000, 9,000 square feet. This is now a 16,000 square foot house, including the garage, which is about 2,500 square feet, but it's conditioned space. So, and it's also expensive space to build.
So we can count that, meaning we can count that in the footage. But also, this is a promontory, so you guys all know that, and you hear about promontories, but this, you're standing on one of the top 6 promontories in all of LA. So before you leave, really take it in and understand what a promontory is. So you hear people say that it's a promontory, but it isn't really. Like, this is a real promontory. This piece of land protrudes out. This buyer looked for 5 years for this piece of land.
And what also is so great about this lot is you're not too high up. You feel like you're a part of the city. You could see people walking down Sunset. It's 2 minutes up from Sunset Plaza. You're not going up a windy hill.
Not
By the
cell
time you get up
service.
there, you're just like, I'm on the view. If somebody's in your backyard.
One more question. Let's do it.
One last question.
Oh, we had one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wait, Jesse.
No.
Ladies first. Ladies first. We know what Jesse's gonna ask. He's gonna make fun of us.
My name is Angela Callagher. I'm actually up from Orange County in Newport.
OC in the house?
Yeah.
Thank you for coming out.
We do a little luxury real estate down there also.
Oh, yeah.
Not to this caliber, but, so my question is about long-term listings and keeping them relevant. So if you do a lot of posts on social media or print advertisement, and you've already sent that picture, you've already sent that video, like, what are you doing on a regular basis to keep it relevant, so that people, when they're swiping, aren't like, I've already seen that?
Rotate, 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 and switch out pictures. And if you have to reshoot. I mean, how many times do we reshoot, Rebecca? I mean, we reshoot on an expensive shoot. It's so painful to have to reshoot, but sometimes you need a different angle and you need different lighting, and sometimes the photographer just didn't capture it, or like today is super overcast. It would be a travesty to shoot this today.
Right.
And if you have that happen and you look at your pictures, go back and just keep tweaking,
Yeah.
edit.
Maybe less is more. Maybe
Yeah.
10 of the best, 20 of the best pictures.
Oh, I know what to do. This is what we do. You tease it. Never give it all away at once.
Right.
Yeah.
Like all the ladies in the room can tell you how you do it. You give a little bit, and then you give a little more in case you don't get that ring the first round. You got to give a little more, and then you give a little more, and you just
Yeah.
keep it fresh.
And it's like a puzzle or a Rubik's Cube. You gotta just keep, trying everything.
But
Leave
don't
no
give it
stone
away.
un-
Do a tier. I always say 3 tiers.
Yeah.
Tier 1, try it with like 4 or 5 shots. Tier 2, open up a couple more shots, and Tier 3 is the video. Why do you save the video for last? Because there are some very uber private people that don't want their house all the way out there, and you can't control that content once it's out. You can control the photos a lot more, a lot easier.
Absolutely. And when you're thinking about the story, we've talked a lot at the beginning about like the architect story and the design details of the house. Separate all those stories into its own piece and really know what the story is for the architect and what the story is for the design. She told a beautiful story about the light fixtures, and we can also lean into the architect. So knowing what you're saying at what time. Just don't plan that you're going to aim that you're going to sell it in the first 30 days, but plan your
Have some
marketing
back
for like
pockets.
60 to 90 days.
Do you really want to ask something, Jesse, or no?
Yeah, I'll have something.
Oh,
So besides listing these, you're also building them. Who are the most exciting local, national, and international architects that you guys are excited about? And then second, how do you navigate if a client comes to you and says, I need a recommendation for an architect?
Great
I'm gonna
question.
answer
Great
that.
question.
I'm gonna answer that. This is exciting. Thank you for this amazing question, Jess. And you know what's so amazing? I get to share this question with you because you're really one of the architects I'm gonna get to mention. You really brought him to light and put his awareness to me, which is awesome, and I thank you so much for that. My two favorite architects in the city, and they come from LA, are Artie Tavangarian of the Arya Group. We just sold San Onofre for him for $83 million. I think he's spectacular. I think his lighting and I just think nobody does it like him. And it's so elegant, but also so out of this world. If you guys have watched the San Onofre video and when his properties go to night and his lighting details everywhere, it looks like the most organic space station.
But then you just want to cozy up.
Or
It's like-
822 Sorbonne at nighttime.
Yeah.
Go back and Google 822 Sorbonne. You're just like, it's mind-boggling. And then Scott Mitchell, which Jesse is a very good friend of Scott Mitchell, and Jesse helped bring Scott Mitchell to really my awareness. And he did Malibu Nobu, and he and actually Artie Tavangarian worked together and built several homes together. And Scott Mitchell, I think, is just so elegant and sophisticated, and he's organic, board form concrete. It's just these monuments of these beautiful homes, and they're LA architects that are doing things now all over the world.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud to have two incredible architects that I look at as the modern day Lautner, Frank Lloyd Wright.
and how would you, if your client asks you for an architect recommendation, how would you approach that?
I would say, listen, I would love to make an introduction for you. And, when you're working with these two type of calibers, it's usually not going to be cheap. People think, oh, I could build this for $1,000 a square foot. This is not $1,000 a square foot
No
house.
way.
Scott Mitchell, the Olson Kundig, these builds are $2,000 a square foot.
Plus,
And
you
it's-
have to pay for their plans.
And it could be twice the amount of time. So I know everybody thinks, oh, this is not that hard. And until you do it and actually do it, we're actually building a house with Scott Mitchell right now. And this is like a 7 or 8 year process. It's crazy, but it's a process.
And it's also, Jesse, it's a personality thing, right? Because you're spending such a big chunk of your time building this dream home, and you want it to be a fun process. So I would say when you make that introduction, say, this is who I love. Please meet them and see if your personality clicks. Talk about price, talk about all the hard stuff first, but most importantly, do you want to have lunch with this person? Because you will be married to them for the duration of this build. Do you trust them, and do you feel comfortable putting your happiness in their hands? Because that's what it really is. And I think whenever you give a
And how are
referral,
you
it's
gonna
so
re-
important to make that disclaimer.
And how are you going to react when you get these big bills?
Yeah, exactly.
Because Branden and Rayni know firsthand. I'd love to look out in the audience and see people taking notes. I hope we drop some knowledge for you guys
Who's
today.
taking notes? I love it,
Yeah,
note taker.
taker and note
Oh my
takers
God,
right
that's
here.
amazing.
And I'm going to say it again, guys. I promise you, one of you guys can easily sell this property. You never know where you're going to be at any time. And I was taught 3 things in real estate. Okay? Be a specialist, learn your market, and then talk about everything, especially the houses that blow you away.
Yeah.
Even if they're the most expensive and they're the highest price per square foot.
And even if somebody says, I would love to see it, get them in the car and show it to them. you're one step closer to selling it. And the fact that you're here means you're one step closer to selling it, because you cannot sell it from the internet. You have to see it to sell it. Anytime you get invited to a place like this, go and see it.
You have to see it to sell it. On that note, we talked about social media and your marketing being in your hands. So today, when you're posting about this house, please tag at the Beverly Hills Estates in your post, and we'll sell it together.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you.